There comes a time, somewhere after 50, when you realize home isn't just about where you live. It's about how you live. It's about who you're becoming and what you're ready to make space for. I'm Julie Ford, real estate expert and longtime wellness coach, and someone who's lived in a multi-generational home for the past decade while reinventing my life and my business. And this is Home After 50, a podcast about what it really means to find, shape, and come home to a new season, to a new home, to a new version of yourself. Whether you're thinking about upsizing, downsizing, moving in with family, or just asking bigger questions about what's next, you're in the right place. Each episode, I will share stories, insights, and real strategies for women redefining home and life on their own terms. Because after 50, home isn't just a place, it's a calling. And this time, it's yours. Hi, welcome to Home After 50. In this very first episode, I would just like to speak with you from the heart. I'm Julie Ford. I'm 56 years old. I'm a real estate expert. I'm a wellness coach. And I've got a whole other list of credentials, which, at our age, we often do. And the reason I decided to make this podcast, Home After 50, was because this year, so many things changed for me. Both of my kids graduated from college. That's a story for another day. They're 2 years apart, but ended up graduating on the same weekend, which was an adventure within itself. My husband took an opportunity to work abroad for several months and pursue some changes in his own life that didn't have anything to do with our marriage, but had everything to do with himself. And I completely turned my business in a new direction that I didn't see coming at all. But I think that this is what happens for us later in life when we experience changes that were expected and changes that were unexpected. For as long as I can remember, I have known that I had a business to create on my own. But I noticed a pattern within myself, and I saw it in my 20s. I saw it in my 30s. I saw it in my 40s. And I really didn't fully catch on to it until my 50s. And that pattern was that I love to collaborate with people. I love partnership. I love creating together with other people. But what I realized was that I was sometimes using it as a crutch. And that's kind of hard to admit because it didn't feel like that at the time. But I can look back and see that pattern of not fully leaning into my own strengths and my own gifts. Or if I did, I was using them in service of someone else's ideas or a joint collaboration of ideas and never fully claiming them as my own. Now, there's nothing wrong with collaboration and partnership. It can be a beautiful thing, but I can see where I let it hold me back. I can see where I didn't claim things for myself that really should have belonged to me. And I can see where I didn't fully allow myself to be all that I could be and who I was becoming. And this year, through some twists of fate, expectations, and many people's different ideas about business, a collaboration that I was involved in ended. And it has taught me so much about what's next for me, what has been calling me all along. And the magical thing about that is that it helped me lean into some areas of my life, some skills of mine, and some messages that I really wanted to convey publicly in a way that I didn't see coming. So about 3 months ago, I decided that I would start speaking on social media, on Instagram, about multi-generational living. I don't know why I never really thought of doing that before. I'm a real estate agent. I help people with their homes all the time. And I've been living in a multi-generational home with my family for 10 years. So this wasn't something I made up. This is something that I've been living for a decade. And it changed our life. My dad died 13, going on 14 years ago. too young. He was only 68. And while he was dying, we did have the beautiful gift of knowing that it was coming. And we had some really special time with him and together as a family to say goodbye and to plan for that. But one of the things that I talked with my dad a lot about and that gave him great comfort during the final months of his life was this idea that we could build an in-law apartment onto our house, our then smaller house than the one we have now, and combine households with my mom. Now, the truth was, my mom actually wasn't ready for that yet. She wasn't in a place in her life where she was ready to make that kind of a big change. And she knew she was losing my dad, and she really wanted to think about having some time on her own to come to terms with that and to understand herself and her own needs. But talking about it with my dad gave him a lot of comfort, and I think me too. And my dad was in construction, so his whole life he was building things. And I was very lucky growing up with him as a dad. I could dream anything up that I wanted him to build, and he would draw up the plans and make it happen. So we were actually drawing plans for an in-law apartment to be added onto our house, which was completely impractical. Looking back, we really didn't have a big enough lot. We would have overbuilt for the neighborhood. There were so many reasons why it wouldn't work. And who knows if he knew that or not, but it was a fun exercise to go through together. It was a comforting exercise to go through together. So after he passed, my mom took some time. She sold their house. She'd never wanted to own a house without him. She sold that pretty much right away and lived in an apartment on her own for about 3 years. She was only 68 as well. And she spent her winters in Arizona with friends. And after about 3 years of doing that, she was spending about half her time in Massachusetts and half in Arizona. And we were starting to think that was a little bit crazy for her to be paying for 2 apartments in 2 places. She didn't have a ton of money. And this house that we're living in now came on the market. The backstory to that was that we had been wanting a bigger house for a long time. We were living in our 5-year house, which turned into our 11-year house, my husband and I and our 2 kids, because we bought in 2004. We bought our first house, and we sort of missed the market the first time around. We got into our real estate life a little late because we only met when, well, I was in my 30s. My husband was in his late 20s. I'm a little older. But we bought our house in 2004, our first house, and we ended up there for 11 years because the market crashed in 2008. And that put us upside down on our mortgage, and we just had to stick it out. We just had to stay in that house for 11 years. But we were, for many years, looking for a larger house and a house a little closer to Boston. We were in Plymouth, Massachusetts, and that was a long commute for many years for my husband to Boston every single day in the pre-COVID days when he was actually going to the office 5 days a week. And we had, this is the kind of funny part. I don't know if my husband thinks it's funny, but it still amuses me. We had, a few months before we found this house, agreed that we were going to stop looking because financially speaking, it didn't really make sense for us. It was a real stretch to think about moving closer to Boston and to a bigger house. I never really stopped looking. So the house we're in now came on the market, and it had a beautiful in-law apartment, like a really beautiful in-law apartment. And the rest of the house was super appealing to me too. It was a bigger house for our family. It was very beautiful. It was, it was going to cut my husband's commute in about half, which was great. And I showed it to him, and a little tricky on my part because my husband is a great cook. He loves to cook, and it had a beautiful kitchen and an incredible stove. And I showed him the house, and I said, "What do you think about this house?" And he looked at the stove and said, "Oh, I love it." So we came to look at it, and everything changed. In a matter of a couple of days, we put an offer in it. We put our house on the market, and somehow it all came together within a couple of months. We had moved in here with my mom. So that'll be a story for another day about how we actually managed the logistics and the finances of changing our households, combining our households. But that brought us into multi-generational living 10 years ago. And we have managed to, in the past 10 years, leverage this combination of households into building equity that eventually allowed us to purchase a home that we rented to my brother when he needed a place to live and his family, which they then purchased from us, which allowed us to leverage that equity to purchase a vacation home, which we turned into an Airbnb. And we were able to actually leverage that to pay for our kids' college education. So when I say that multi-generational living brought us closer as a family, which in this time where my mom has been aging, you know, she's 82 now and is experiencing some health problems and has had some issues over the last couple of years that, thank God, we were all close by for. But also we've been able to leverage this experience into building more wealth and stability for our family and the gift of being able to pay for college education for both of our children. I probably could make a very long list of the benefits of multi-generational living. So when everything changed in my business earlier this year and I finally got the idea to start sharing about multi-gen living on Instagram, I was very surprised that my Instagram blew up. And I mean, it really blew up. There's a whole other story I'll tell sometime about the help that I had in growing my Instagram and what I needed to learn in order to grow a successful Instagram account for my business. And I have coaches that I will give credit to in the future when I talk about that in more depth, because they were a huge part of me learning how to leverage social media and Instagram specifically. But today I just want to share with you that what happened was I did a few posts about multi-gen living, and then one day I posted one reel and it just went viral. As of now, it's got 1.6 million views. And that first viral reel brought me, I think, more than 5,000 or 6,000 new followers. And I thought, wow, this is crazy. I've never gone viral on social media before. And it was a fun experience. I didn't see it coming. I had a lot to learn about how to manage that. You know, you get thousands of comments on a post and it's a little bit overwhelming, but it was fun. And so I just kept going. I committed to talking about multi-generational living day after day. And I was getting some great traction on Instagram. And then about a month later, another reel went viral. And this time, what I was talking about in that reel was not just multi-generational living, but this idea that after 50, our life doesn't need to get smaller. So I challenged the idea of downsizing in that reel and said, what if downsizing didn't have to be your next step after 50? What if you could want a bigger life after 50? What if you could upsize? What if you could start a new business? What if you could create a bigger, more exciting life and not a smaller one after 50? And that reel took off even faster than the other one. Now it's up to, I think, 1.7 million views and has brought me more than 12 or 13,000 followers. So my Instagram account grew from 1,200 followers in May, the beginning of May, to today I'm on the verge of hitting 22,000 followers, which is crazy to me because I was at about 1,200 followers for, I'd say, at least 3 years. So this has taught me something that really helped me understand a conversation that I wanted to engage in with you, and that so many other women are hungry for. And that is this idea that after 50, life doesn't have to get smaller. That after 50, we can want expansion. We can want growth. We can want a bigger home. We don't have to want a smaller home. Now, for some people, maybe they do want a smaller home, and that's fine. But we can want something different than what we've been told we should expect as we age. And if that means a home with space for multiple generations of your family, which I talk about a lot, beautiful. Or maybe it means selling everything and going to live abroad. There's someone I've connected with on Instagram through both of our accounts, hers and mine, that is doing exactly that. I always say that's sort of my alter ego, is selling everything and moving abroad and living this completely different life. It's not where my heart is really at right now, but I love the idea. And I hope that through this podcast, Home After 50, we can have these conversations about what it means to rewrite the rules of what getting older looks like, what it means to claim home for ourselves in every sense of the word, in the place that we live, in our day-to-day lives, in our relationships, in our dreams, in our businesses, in all the ways that we can come home to ourselves and be more ourselves than ever. Because what I've learned being 56 years old and finally creating a business and a life that feels like is really mine this time is that the older we get, the more capable we are of doing that. Because if we've been intentional about knowing ourselves, about asking ourselves what we really want to contribute, and who we really want to be, the wisdom and the depth and the beauty that we can bring into that creation of ourselves and our lives after 50 is stunning. Thank you for being here for this very first episode of Home After 50. I'm really, really grateful that you're here for this journey with me, and I hope you'll continue to join me as we explore everything it means to come home to our homes, our businesses, and ourselves after 50. I'll see you soon. Thanks so much for listening to Home After 50. If this episode resonated, I'd love it if you'd come hang out with me on Instagram. I am at It's Julie Ford, ITSJULIFORD. Just remember, no E on Julie. That's where I share ideas and behind the scenes about multi-generational living, real estate, business, and creating a next chapter that you love. And if you're curious about whether multi-generational living might be right for you, you can grab my free guide. It's in the link right in my Instagram bio. It's a simple way to get started imagining what's next. Because after 50, home isn't just a place, it's who we're becoming. See you next time.